Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent increase in packet loss and latency on a specific virtual machine's network traffic, impacting application performance. The virtual machine is connected to an NSXT logical switch, which is in turn connected to a Tier 1 gateway. The underlying physical network infrastructure appears stable, and other virtual machines on the same host and same logical switch are not exhibiting similar issues. What is the most effective initial diagnostic step to isolate the root cause? Option A. Focus solely on the physical network switch port statistics connected to the host where the affected VM resides, assuming the issue must be at the physical layer. Option B. Immediately reconfigure the NSXT logical switch's MTU settings to rule out potential fragmentation issues. Option C. Examine the NSXT edge node logs and statistics for any anomalies related to the affected VM's traffic flow and the Tier 1 gateway. Option D. Initiate a full network scan of the affected virtual machine to identify any potential malware causing network congestion. Correct answer is C. Examine the NSXT edge node logs and statistics for any anomalies related to the affected VM's traffic flow and the Tier 1 gateway. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments, identifying the root cause of performance degradation when multiple components are involved. The difficulty lies in isolating the issue within the complex interplay of physical hardware, hypervisor networking, and virtual network constructs. A professional must not only understand the technical aspects of NSXT, but also apply a systematic troubleshooting methodology that aligns with best practices for operational efficiency and service availability. The correct approach involves a methodical, layered investigation, starting from the most fundamental components and progressively moving up the stack. This aligns with industry best practices for network troubleshooting, which emphasize a top-down or bottom-up approach to efficiently pinpoint the source of a problem. In a regulated environment, this systematic approach is crucial for demonstrating due diligence, ensuring compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs, and minimizing downtime, which can have significant financial and operational consequences. The ability to accurately diagnose and resolve issues quickly is a hallmark of professional competence. An incorrect approach that immediately focuses on reconfiguring virtual network components without first verifying the underlying physical infrastructure or hypervisor networking would be professionally unacceptable. This bypasses critical diagnostic steps and could lead to misconfiguration, further exacerbating the problem or introducing new issues. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of systematic troubleshooting, potentially violating operational procedures and SLAs. It also fails to account for the possibility that the issue originates outside the direct control of the virtual network configuration, leading to wasted effort and prolonged outages. Another incorrect approach would be to solely rely on automated alerts without performing manual verification and deeper analysis. While alerts are valuable indicators, they are not a substitute for professional judgment and in-depth investigation. Over-reliance on automation without understanding the context can lead to false positives or missed critical details. This can result in incorrect remediation actions, impacting service stability, and potentially leading to non-compliance with operational standards. The professional reasoning process should involve 1. Understanding the reported symptoms and their impact. 2. Forming hypotheses about potential causes based on the symptoms and system architecture. 3. Systematically testing these hypotheses, starting with the most fundamental layers of the network stack. 4. Documenting all findings and actions taken. And 5. Escalating or seeking assistance when necessary. This structured approach ensures that all possibilities are considered, the most likely causes are investigated first, and the resolution is efficient and effective. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical virtual network service is experiencing intermittent packet loss, impacting user experience and application performance. The network administrator has identified a potential configuration parameter that, if adjusted, is rumored to resolve similar issues in other environments. However, the specific impact of this adjustment on the current, highly customized virtual network infrastructure is unknown, and there is no existing documentation or approval for such a change. Which of the following represents the most professional and compliant approach to resolving this issue? Option A. Systematically analyze the virtual network traffic and logs to pinpoint the exact cause of packet loss, then propose a documented and approved change to address the identified root cause. Option B. Apply the rumored configuration change to a non-production environment first to test its efficacy, and if successful, proceed with the change in production without further formal documentation or approval. Option C. Immediately adjust the rumored configuration parameter to see if it resolves the packet loss, as the potential for a quick fix outweighs the need for extensive analysis and documentation. Option D. Escalate the issue to a vendor support team and await their instructions, without performing any independent analysis or attempting any remediation steps. Correct answer is A. Systematically analyze the virtual network traffic and logs to pinpoint the exact cause of packet loss, then propose a documented and approved change to address the identified root cause. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments, optimizing performance while adhering to strict operational guidelines and potential regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid troubleshooting and performance enhancement with the requirement for documented, approved changes. Unsanctioned modifications, even if seemingly beneficial in the short term, can introduce unforeseen risks, violate change control policies, and potentially lead to compliance breaches if audit trails are compromised, or if the changes impact security postures in ways not properly assessed. The pressure to resolve performance issues quickly can lead to shortcuts that undermine established best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves identifying the root cause through systematic analysis and then implementing a documented, approved change, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of IT governance and operational excellence. In a regulated environment, this process ensures that all changes are traceable, auditable, and have undergone a risk assessment. This methodical approach minimizes the likelihood of introducing new problems, ensures that solutions are sustainable, and maintains compliance with any relevant standards or regulations that mandate change control and auditability. The VMware Certified Professional 6 Network Virtualization Certification itself implies a commitment to understanding and applying these structured methodologies within the VMware ecosystem. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a change without proper analysis or documentation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses essential change control procedures, which are often mandated by industry best practices and regulatory frameworks, though specific regulations are not cited for this exam. The principle of controlled change is universal in professional IT. This lack of documentation makes it impossible to audit the change, understand its impact, or revert it if necessary, creating a security and operational risk. Directly applying a known fix without understanding its applicability to the specific environment is also a failure. It assumes a universal solution, which is rarely the case in complex customized virtual networks. This can lead to unintended consequences, performance degradation in other areas, or security vulnerabilities. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for systematic problem solving, which are core professional responsibilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing performance issues in a virtualized network should always follow a structured troubleshooting and change management process. This involves 1. Clearly defining the problem and its impact. 2. Gathering data and performing systematic analysis to identify the root cause. 3. Proposing solutions, assessing their risks and benefits, and obtaining necessary approvals. 4. Implementing the approved solution with proper documentation and verification. 5. Monitoring the environment post-implementation. This framework ensures accountability, minimizes risk, and promotes continuous improvement while maintaining compliance. Question 3. Investigation of a network virtualization implementation challenge in a hybrid cloud environment, where an organization needs to maintain consistent and secure network segmentation between its on-premises VMware NSX deployment and its public cloud infrastructure. The primary concern is to avoid security gaps and ensure compliance with industry regulations. Which approach best addresses this challenge? Option A. Manually configure separate firewall rules and security groups on both NSX and the public cloud provider's platform to mirror each other. Option B. Focus solely on implementing robust network segmentation within the on-premises NSX environment, assuming the public cloud provider's native security is sufficient. Option C. Rely exclusively on the public cloud provider's default network security configurations without integrating them with the organization's established security policies. Option D. Implement a solution that provides a unified management plane or a consistent policy framework for defining and enforcing network segmentation across both on-premises and public cloud environments. The correct answer is D. Implement a solution that provides a unified management plane or a consistent policy framework for defining and enforcing network segmentation across both on-premises and public cloud environments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in network virtualization, ensuring consistent and secure network segmentation across a hybrid cloud environment. The complexity arises from managing disparate network control planes and security policies between on-premises VMware NSX and a public cloud provider's native networking constructs. Professionals must balance the need for granular control and security with the operational overhead of maintaining multiple management interfaces and policy enforcement points. The challenge is amplified by the potential for misconfigurations that could lead to security breaches, compliance violations, or service disruptions. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that aligns with organizational security posture, compliance requirements, and operational efficiency. Correct approach analysis. Leveraging a unified management plane or a consistent policy framework that abstracts the underlying infrastructure is the best professional practice. This approach ensures that network segmentation policies are defined once and enforced consistently across both on-premises NSX and the public cloud. This minimizes the risk of configuration drift, reduces operational complexity, and enhances the overall security posture by applying uniform security controls. It aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, ensuring that only authorized traffic traverses network segments. From a regulatory perspective, a unified approach aids in demonstrating compliance by providing a single pane of glass for auditing and reporting on network security controls, which is crucial for frameworks like ISO 27001 or NIST. Incorrect approaches analysis. Manually configuring separate firewall rules and security groups on both NSX and the public cloud provider's platform is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach is prone to human error, leading to inconsistencies in policy enforcement. It creates security gaps where unauthorized access could occur, violating data protection regulations and potentially leading to data breaches. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in safeguarding sensitive data. Implementing a solution that only addresses network segmentation on-premises without extending it to the public cloud is another failure. This creates a blind spot in the security architecture, leaving the public cloud environment vulnerable. It fails to meet the comprehensive security requirements often mandated by compliance standards that cover all deployed environments. Relying solely on the public cloud provider's default network security configurations without integrating them with the organization's established security policies is also problematic. While cloud providers offer robust security features, their defaults may not align with specific organizational risk appetites or regulatory mandates. This can lead to non-compliance and an inadequate security posture. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing solutions that offer centralized management and consistent policy enforcement. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the organization's security and compliance requirements. 2. Assessing the capabilities of available hybrid cloud networking solutions. 3. Evaluating the operational impact and complexity of each approach. 4. Selecting a solution that provides a unified view and control over network security policies across all environments. 5. Regularly auditing and testing the implemented controls to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 4. What factors determine the most effective and secure approach to implementing network virtualization enhancements in a VMware environment, considering the need for both performance improvements and adherence to best practices? Option A. The speed at which the enhancements can be deployed to address immediate performance concerns, regardless of potential long-term security implications. Option B. The extent to which proposed enhancements are aligned with VMware's documented best practices for network virtualization, incorporate robust security considerations, and are validated through comprehensive testing. Option C. The perceived complexity of the existing network architecture and the willingness to implement changes without detailed documentation or testing. Option D. The cost-effectiveness of the chosen solutions, prioritizing the least expensive options available without extensive validation. The correct answer is B. The extent to which proposed enhancements are aligned with VMware's documented best practices for network virtualization, incorporate robust security considerations, and are validated through comprehensive testing. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for network performance improvements with the long-term implications of security and compliance. The pressure to deliver rapid results can lead to shortcuts that compromise established best practices and regulatory adherence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any network virtualization changes are not only effective, but also secure and compliant with relevant VMware and general IT best practices, which are implicitly governed by the principles of data integrity and operational resilience expected in a professional IT environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, risk-based evaluation before implementing changes. This involves understanding the existing network architecture, identifying potential security vulnerabilities introduced by virtualization, and ensuring that the proposed solutions align with VMware's recommended best practices for network virtualization. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of introducing new security threats, ensures compliance with potential audit requirements, even if not explicitly stated in the exam's limited scope. The principles of good governance apply, and promotes a stable, reliable network environment. Adhering to established best practices, such as those outlined by VMware for NSX, is crucial for maintaining the integrity and security of the virtualized network infrastructure. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed of implementation without considering security implications is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the introduction of vulnerabilities that could be exploited, resulting in data breaches or service disruptions. Such an approach fails to uphold the professional responsibility to protect organizational assets and data. Another incorrect approach that disregards the need for thorough documentation and testing before deployment is also problematic. This lack of diligence can lead to unforeseen issues, make troubleshooting difficult, and hinder future maintenance or upgrades, ultimately impacting operational efficiency and potentially violating implicit requirements for auditable and maintainable systems. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over robust security and performance features would be a failure to invest in the necessary tools and expertise to properly manage a virtualized network, potentially leading to a less secure and less performant environment, which is contrary to professional standards of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem or objective. Second, research and understand the relevant best practices and potential risks associated with the proposed solution, drawing upon vendor documentation like VMware's and industry standards. Third, evaluate different approaches against these criteria, considering security, performance, scalability, maintainability, and compliance. Fourth, conduct thorough testing and validation in a non-production environment. Finally, implement changes with comprehensive documentation and a rollback plan. Question 5. When evaluating the implementation of a new microsegmentation strategy within a VMware NSX environment designed to isolate sensitive customer data, which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data privacy regulations? Option A. Focus on isolating development and testing environments from production, with the assumption that sensitive data is not present in non-production segments. Option B. Prioritize network performance and security policy enforcement based solely on application tiers, without specific consideration for the type of data processed within each segment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data flow analysis to identify all sensitive data types, map their movement across the network, and implement granular access controls and encryption tailored to protect this data within the microsegmented zones. Option D. Deploy broad network access rules between segments to simplify management, assuming that existing endpoint security measures will adequately protect the data. The correct answer is B. Prioritize network performance and security policy enforcement based solely on application tiers, without specific consideration for the type of data processed within each segment. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized network environments, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations when implementing new network services. The core difficulty lies in balancing the technical requirements of network segmentation and security with the legal obligations to protect sensitive data. Professionals must understand how network configurations can inadvertently expose or mishandle protected information, leading to significant legal and reputational damage. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive, risk-based strategy that integrates regulatory considerations from the outset of the design and implementation phases. This aligns with the principles of privacy by design and by default, which are increasingly mandated by data protection frameworks. By conducting a thorough data flow analysis and implementing granular access controls and encryption, the organization demonstrates due diligence in safeguarding personal data, thereby meeting its regulatory obligations. This approach minimizes the risk of non-compliance and builds trust with data subjects. An incorrect approach that overlooks the data privacy implications of network segmentation is professionally unacceptable. For instance, implementing segmentation solely for performance or operational efficiency, without considering the data types traversing those segments, could lead to the unauthorized disclosure or processing of sensitive information. This failure to assess and mitigate privacy risks constitutes a direct violation of data protection principles, potentially resulting in regulatory fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach might involve relying on outdated or insufficient security controls that do not adequately protect data in transit or at rest within the virtualized network, again, exposing the organization to compliance breaches. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the data being handled. This involves early engagement with legal and compliance teams, conducting comprehensive risk assessments that include privacy impact assessments, and embedding compliance requirements into technical design specifications. The process should be iterative, with ongoing monitoring and auditing to ensure continued adherence to both technical and regulatory standards. Question 6. System analysis indicates a planned modification to a distributed firewall rule set within the VMware NSX environment that is intended to enhance security posture for a critical customer-facing application. The application team has confirmed that the application itself should not be directly impacted by this specific rule change. However, the network virtualization team is concerned about potential indirect effects on application performance and availability due to the interconnected nature of the NSX fabric. Which approach best mitigates the risk of unintended negative consequences for the application? Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that analyzes the proposed firewall rule changes' effect on all relevant NSX components, including logical switches, routers, and load balancers, and their interaction with the application's traffic flow and performance metrics, potentially involving simulation or testing in a staging environment. Option B. Proceed with the firewall rule change as planned, relying on the application team's confirmation and assuming no network-level impact. Option C. Implement the firewall rule change and monitor the application's performance and availability closely for a short period, ready to roll back if issues arise. Option D. Delegate the responsibility of assessing network impacts to the application team, as they are most familiar with the application's requirements. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the firewall rule change as planned, relying on the application team's confirmation and assuming no network-level impact. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized network environments where changes, even seemingly minor ones, can have cascading and unforeseen impacts. The professional is tasked with assessing the potential consequences of a planned network configuration change on a critical application. The challenge lies in the interconnectedness of virtual network components, the potential for subtle misconfigurations to cause significant downtime, and the need to balance operational efficiency with risk mitigation. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to prevent service disruptions, data loss, and reputational damage, all of which can have regulatory and financial repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of the proposed network change. This includes identifying all affected components within the VMware NSX environment, such as logical switches, routers, firewalls, and load balancers, as well as the application's dependencies on these components. It requires understanding the application's traffic patterns, performance requirements, and criticality. Documenting the current state, simulating the change in a non-production environment, if feasible, and engaging with application owners and stakeholders are vital steps. This methodical process ensures that all potential risks are identified, understood, and addressed before the change is implemented in production. This aligns with best practices for change management and risk assessment, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by IT governance frameworks and industry standards aimed at ensuring service availability and data integrity. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the change without a formal impact assessment is a direct violation of sound IT governance and risk management principles. This approach ignores the potential for unintended consequences, leading to service outages, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities. Such failures can result in non-compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs, and potentially breach regulatory requirements related to data protection and business continuity. Relying solely on the application team's understanding of the network is insufficient. While application teams understand their application's needs, they may not possess the deep knowledge of NSX networking intricacies required to foresee all potential network-level impacts. This siloed approach increases the risk of overlooking critical network dependencies or interactions, leading to unforeseen issues. Performing a superficial review of the change request without detailed technical validation or simulation is also inadequate. This approach might catch obvious errors, but will likely miss subtle but significant impacts, such as performance degradation due to suboptimal routing or unexpected firewall rule interactions. This lack of due diligence can lead to production incidents that could have been prevented. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and risk-aware approach to change management. This involves establishing a robust process for assessing the impact of all proposed changes to the virtual network infrastructure. The process should include 1. Change identification and scoping. Clearly define the proposed change and identify all potentially affected systems and services. 2. Impact analysis. Conduct a detailed technical assessment of how the change will affect network functionality, performance, security, and availability. This includes understanding dependencies and potential conflicts. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the likelihood and severity of potential negative impacts. 4. Mitigation planning. Develop strategies to minimize or eliminate identified risks. 5. Testing and validation. Where possible, test the change in a controlled environment before production deployment. 6. Stakeholder communication. Inform all relevant parties about the proposed change, its potential impacts, and the mitigation plan. 7. Post-implementation review. Monitor the system after the change to ensure it has been successful and to identify any unforeseen issues. This structured approach ensures that changes are implemented safely and effectively, minimizing disruption and maintaining compliance with operational and regulatory standards. Question 7. Process analysis reveals that a critical new network service is being deployed by a development team without following the established change control procedures. The deployment is imminent, and the team is under pressure to go live immediately. The network virtualization infrastructure is subject to internal security policies and potential external regulatory oversight. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and mitigate risk? Option A. Implement the change and immediately escalate the issue to senior management for a decision. Option B. Halt the deployment and initiate the formal change control process for review and approval. Option C. Allow the deployment to proceed as it is a development team initiative and not considered a production change. Option D. Proceed with the deployment and document the change retrospectively after it is live. Correct answer is B. Halt the deployment and initiate the formal change control process for review and approval. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant infrastructure. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass established security and operational procedures. The professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with unapproved changes, ensuring that the network remains stable, secure, and adheres to any relevant regulatory frameworks or internal policies governing network changes. The absence of a formal change control process for this specific deployment introduces a significant risk of unintended consequences, such as security vulnerabilities, performance degradation, or compliance violations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves halting the deployment and initiating the formal change control process. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for managing changes in critical IT infrastructure. By adhering to a documented change control procedure, the organization ensures that the proposed network modification is reviewed for potential impacts on security, performance, and compliance. This process typically includes risk assessment, impact analysis, rollback planning, and stakeholder approval. This systematic approach minimizes the likelihood of introducing errors or vulnerabilities, thereby safeguarding the integrity and availability of the network. It also provides an auditable trail, which is crucial for demonstrating compliance with internal policies and external regulations. Correct approaches analysis. Proceeding with the deployment without formal approval or documentation represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established governance mechanisms designed to protect the organization's assets and data. This approach increases the risk of security breaches, service disruptions, and non-compliance with data protection or industry-specific regulations. It also undermines the principle of accountability, as there is no clear record of who authorized the change or what risks were considered. Implementing the change and documenting it retrospectively, while better than no documentation, still carries substantial risk. The change has already been made without prior review and approval, meaning potential negative impacts may have already occurred or are imminent. This approach fails to proactively identify and mitigate risks before they manifest, which is a core tenet of responsible IT management and regulatory compliance. It also creates an incomplete audit trail, as the decision-making process leading to the change is not captured. Escalating the issue to senior management without first attempting to follow the established change control process, even if it's to request an exception, is also problematic. While escalation may be necessary if the process is genuinely blocked, bypassing it entirely suggests a lack of commitment to established procedures. This can set a precedent for future non-compliance and may indicate a failure to understand or utilize the existing governance framework effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals in network virtualization must adopt a proactive and process-driven approach to change management. A robust decision-making framework in such situations involves 1. Understanding and adhering to established policies and procedures. Always start by consulting and following the organization's documented change control policies. 2. Risk assessment. Before implementing any change, assess the potential risks to security, performance, and compliance. 3. Impact analysis. Determine how the proposed change will affect other system services and users. 4. Communication and collaboration. Engage with relevant stakeholders to ensure awareness and obtain necessary approvals. 5. Documentation. Maintain thorough records of all changes, including the rationale, implementation steps, and testing results. 6. Continuous improvement. Regularly review and refine change management processes to enhance their effectiveness. In this scenario, the immediate priority is to ensure that the network remains secure and compliant. Therefore, halting the unapproved deployment and initiating the formal change control process is the only professionally responsible and compliant course of action. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that a proposed network virtualization configuration using a specific version of VMware NSX might fall outside of standard supportability guidelines due to its unique deployment characteristics, potentially impacting the ability to receive critical security patches. Option A. Engage with VMware support and account management to obtain official clarification on the supportability and licensing implications of the proposed configuration, ensuring adherence to contractual obligations and regulatory requirements. Option B. Proceed with the configuration as planned, assuming that if the functionality is present, it will be implicitly supported, and address any support issues only if they arise. Option C. Seek informal advice from community forums and third-party consultants to gauge the general risk of the configuration, without direct engagement with VMware. Option D. Implement the configuration and immediately begin exploring alternative, unsupported methods for patching and security hardening to compensate for potential lack of official support. The correct answer is A. Engage with VMware support and account management to obtain official clarification on the supportability and licensing implications of the proposed configuration, ensuring adherence to contractual obligations and regulatory requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to maintaining compliance with VMware's licensing and support policies within a regulated environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for cost savings and operational flexibility with the absolute requirement to adhere to contractual obligations and regulatory frameworks that govern the use of licensed software. Misinterpreting or circumventing these policies can lead to significant financial penalties, legal repercussions, and reputational damage, especially in environments where auditability and compliance are paramount. The need for accurate interpretation of licensing terms and the implications of unsupported configurations demands a thorough understanding of both the technical and legal aspects of the VMware ecosystem. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with VMware's official channels to clarify licensing and support status for the proposed configuration. This aligns with best professional practice because it demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and contractual integrity. By seeking official guidance, the organization ensures that its actions are in line with VMware's End-User License Agreements (EULA) and support policies, which are the governing documents. This proactive stance mitigates the risk of non-compliance, avoids potential penalties, and ensures that the organization can continue to receive critical security patches and technical support, thereby maintaining the stability and security of its virtualized network infrastructure. This approach prioritizes due diligence and adherence to established legal and contractual frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the configuration based on assumptions or informal advice from third parties without official VMware confirmation. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it disregards the explicit terms of the EULA and support policies. Relying on assumptions can lead to the deployment of unsupported configurations, which may violate licensing terms and render the environment ineligible for critical security updates, creating a significant security risk and potential compliance breach. Another incorrect approach is to interpret the licensing terms in a manner that favors cost reduction without verifying the implications for support and compliance. This is a failure to uphold contractual obligations. VMware's licensing often ties support and upgrade rights to specific versions and configurations. Deviating from these without explicit authorization or understanding of the consequences can result in a breach of contract, leading to audits, fines, and the inability to obtain necessary support, thus jeopardizing the integrity of the virtualized network. A further incorrect approach is to assume that a configuration is compliant simply because it functions technically. Functionality does not equate to compliance. This is a critical regulatory and ethical lapse. VMware's licensing and support policies are legal agreements that dictate not only what can be deployed, but also how it must be licensed and supported to remain compliant. Operating in a technically functional but non-compliant state exposes the organization to significant legal and financial risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes due diligence, risk assessment, and adherence to contractual and regulatory obligations. This involves 1. Identifying the specific VMware product and version in question. 2. Thoroughly reviewing the relevant VMware EULA and support policies. 3. Consulting official VMware documentation and support resources. 4. If ambiguity persists, formally engaging with VMware sales, support representatives for clarification. 5. Documenting all communications and decisions related to licensing and support status. 6. Ensuring that any proposed configuration aligns with both technical requirements and legal/contractual obligations before implementation. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and compliant, thereby safeguarding the organization from potential regulatory and financial repercussions. Question 9. System analysis indicates a need to integrate a new virtual network segment within an existing VMware NSXT environment to support a critical business application. The deployment must be performed with minimal disruption and ensure robust security and compliance from the moment the segment becomes active. Which approach best balances rapid deployment with these security and compliance imperatives? Option A. Implement the new segment using standard vSphere networking and then apply NSXT security policies as a post-deployment step to secure the segment. Option B. Leverage NSXD's distributed firewall and security groups to define and enforce granular security policies for the new segment during its initial deployment, ensuring that access controls and logging are active from the outset. Option C. Deploy the new segment with minimal initial configuration and rely on existing perimeter firewall rules to provide security, planning to revisit the segment's security posture in a future maintenance window. Option D. Deploy the new virtual network segment and subsequently configure microsegmentation policies and logging mechanisms to align with organizational security standards and compliance requirements. The correct answer is D. Deploy the new virtual network segment and subsequently configure microsegmentation policies and logging mechanisms to align with organizational security standards and compliance requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments where the need for rapid deployment of new services or infrastructure changes conflicts with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant network. The professional must balance agility with adherence to established security policies and regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method for integrating new network segments, ensuring that all security controls and logging mechanisms are properly configured from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. Failure to do so can lead to security vulnerabilities, compliance gaps, and operational inefficiencies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and integrated strategy for network segment deployment. This aligns with best practices for network virtualization security and compliance. By leveraging NSXD's microsegmentation capabilities and integrating security policy definition into the deployment workflow, the professional ensures that security is built in, not bolted on. This approach directly supports the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security tenet, by defining granular access controls for the new segment. Furthermore, it facilitates comprehensive logging and monitoring from the moment the segment becomes active, which is crucial for audit trails and incident response, thereby meeting potential regulatory demands for visibility and accountability within the virtualized infrastructure. This method embodies a defense-in-depth strategy within the virtualized network fabric. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves deploying the segment without immediate security policy enforcement, intending to address it later. This creates a window of vulnerability where the new segment is exposed and potentially accessible to unauthorized traffic. This failure to implement security controls from the outset is a direct contravention of security best practices and could lead to a breach, violating the principle of due diligence in security management. It also introduces significant compliance risks, as many regulations require that all network infrastructure be secured and monitored from its inception. Another incorrect approach might be to rely solely on perimeter security for the new segment, assuming that existing firewall rules will suffice. This overlooks the inherent benefits of microsegmentation in NSXD, which allows for granular security policies within the data center. Relying only on perimeter security for a new internal segment is a form of security oversimplification that can leave internal assets vulnerable to lateral movement by attackers who breach the perimeter. This approach fails to adopt a modern, zero-trust security posture within the virtualized environment and can lead to compliance issues related to internal network segmentation and access control. A third incorrect approach could be to deploy the segment and then attempt to retroactively apply security policies and logging. This is inefficient and prone to errors. It is difficult to ensure that all necessary configurations are applied correctly after the fact, and there is a high risk of misconfiguration or missed requirements. This reactive approach is less effective than a proactive, integrated deployment and increases the likelihood of compliance violations due to incomplete or improperly configured security measures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a security-first mindset when deploying any new network infrastructure, especially in a virtualized environment like NSXD. The decision-making process should prioritize integrating security controls and compliance requirements into the initial design and deployment phases. This involves understanding the specific security and compliance mandates applicable to the organization and ensuring that the chosen deployment method inherently supports these requirements. When evaluating different deployment strategies, professionals should ask, does this approach build security in from the start? Does it adhere to the principle of least privilege? Does it ensure adequate logging and monitoring from inception? Does it align with regulatory expectations for network security and segmentation? By consistently applying these questions, professionals can make informed decisions that lead to secure, compliant, and operationally sound network virtualization deployments. Question 10. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to network virtualization troubleshooting. While investigating a performance degradation issue impacting multiple customer virtual machines on a shared NSX environment, a network administrator discovers that the root cause appears to be related to unusual traffic patterns originating from a specific customer segment. The administrator has the technical capability to directly access and analyze the traffic flow data within that customer segment to pinpoint the exact source of the anomaly. However, this data may contain sensitive customer information. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Document the observed traffic anomaly and escalate the issue to management and the customer, requesting explicit permission to access and analyze their specific traffic data for troubleshooting purposes. Option B. Immediately access and analyze the customer's traffic flow data to identify and resolve the performance issue as quickly as possible, as the primary responsibility is to restore service. Option C. Proceed with analyzing the traffic data, but anonymize or mask any potentially sensitive information before detailed examination, assuming this is sufficient to protect customer privacy. Option D. Inform the customer that their segment is suspected of causing network issues and advise them to conduct their own investigation of their traffic patterns. The correct answer is B. Immediately access and analyze the customer's traffic flow data to identify and resolve the performance issue as quickly as possible, as the primary responsibility is to restore service. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma common in IT environments, particularly concerning data privacy and security within a virtualized network infrastructure. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for troubleshooting and performance optimization with the obligation to protect sensitive customer data. The VMware Certified Professional 6 Network Virtualization Certification implies a professional context or adherence to best practices and potential regulatory frameworks. Though not explicitly stated for this exam, the principles of data protection are universal in professional IT, is paramount. The correct approach prioritizes data privacy and security by seeking explicit authorization and minimizing data exposure. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and the ethical obligation to protect confidential information. In a professional setting, especially one dealing with customer data, obtaining consent or adhering to established data handling policies before accessing or analyzing potentially sensitive information is a cornerstone of responsible practice. This approach demonstrates a commitment to client trust and avoids potential breaches of confidentiality. Incorrect approaches fail to uphold these critical ethical and professional standards. Accessing customer data without explicit consent or a clear, documented policy allowing such access constitutes a breach of privacy and could have significant legal and reputational consequences. Furthermore, indiscriminately collecting or analyzing data without a defined purpose or scope increases the risk of accidental exposure of sensitive information and violates the principle of data minimization. The failure to document actions or seek appropriate approvals also undermines accountability and transparency within the organization. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a systematic approach. 1. Identify the core ethical conflict, the need for information versus the obligation to protect privacy. 2. Consult relevant policies. Review organizational data handling, privacy, and security policies. 3. Seek authorization. If policies are unclear or do not cover the situation, obtain explicit approval from management or the relevant data protection officer. 4. Minimize data exposure. If access is granted, ensure only the necessary data is accessed and handled securely. 5. Document all actions. Maintain a clear record of the problem, the steps taken, and the authorization received. Question 11. The performance metrics show a consistent and significant degradation in network latency for a specific segment of users accessing a critical virtualized application. While the data points to a potential bottleneck, there is no immediate indication of the root cause, and initial assumptions could unfairly implicate a particular team or individual responsible for that user group. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Advise the affected users to adjust their application usage patterns to mitigate the latency without investigating the underlying technical cause. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive technical investigation into the virtual network infrastructure, including NSXT configurations, vSphere resource allocation, and potential external network factors to identify the root cause of the latency before any conclusions are drawn about user or team performance. Option C. Focus solely on optimizing the application itself, assuming the network infrastructure is functioning as designed, and disregard the network latency metrics as a secondary concern. Option D. Immediately escalate the issue to management, highlighting the potential performance issues caused by the team responsible for that user segment, and recommend disciplinary action based on the observed latency. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive technical investigation into the virtual network infrastructure, including NSXT configurations, vSphere resource allocation, and potential external network factors, to identify the root cause of the latency before any conclusions are drawn about user or team performance. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IT environments where performance data might be misinterpreted or used to unfairly target individuals. The challenge lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and accountability with the ethical obligation to treat individuals fairly and avoid prejudgment based on incomplete or potentially misleading data. The core of the challenge is to investigate the root cause of performance degradation without resorting to immediate punitive measures. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, objective investigation before any conclusions are drawn or actions are taken. This aligns with principles of fairness and due process, ensuring that any performance issues are properly identified and addressed at their source, whether technical or human. It also upholds the professional responsibility to maintain a productive and supportive work environment. In the context of network virtualization, this means examining the virtual network infrastructure, configurations, and resource allocation before assuming user error or malfeasance. An incorrect approach that immediately blames a specific individual or team without investigation fails to uphold professional integrity, demonstrates a lack of due diligence, and can lead to unfair accusations, damaged morale, and a failure to resolve the actual underlying technical problem. This approach violates ethical principles of fairness and can create a hostile work environment. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the metrics altogether, abdicates professional responsibility to maintain optimal system performance and can lead to further degradation and potential service disruption, which is also professionally unacceptable. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process that begins with data verification and objective analysis. This involves understanding the context of the performance metrics, consulting relevant documentation and logs, and engaging with affected parties to gather information. The process should then move to hypothesis generation and testing, followed by the implementation of corrective actions based on evidence. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, fair, and effective, minimizing the risk of ethical breaches and operational failures. Question 12. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in outbound network traffic from a specific virtual machine to an unknown external IP address, accompanied by a slight but consistent rise in CPU utilization on that same virtual machine. Option A. Ignore the CPU utilization increase as it is minor and focus solely on the outbound traffic, assuming it is a legitimate, albeit unusual, communication. Option B. Immediately isolate the virtual machine from the network and initiate a full forensic analysis, regardless of the potential impact on ongoing operations. Option C. Adjust the monitoring system's thresholds to a higher value to reduce the number of alerts generated, as the current activity might be within an acceptable, albeit unobserved, operational range. Option D. Correlate the traffic pattern and IP address with known indicators of compromise from reputable threat intelligence feeds, and assess the criticality of the affected virtual machine within the network infrastructure before determining the appropriate response level. The correct answer is D. Correlate the traffic pattern and IP address with known indicators of compromise from reputable threat intelligence feeds, and assess the criticality of the affected virtual machine within the network infrastructure before determining the appropriate response level. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments where the sheer volume of data generated by monitoring systems can be overwhelming. The professional must discern between genuine security threats and benign anomalies without compromising the integrity or performance of the virtual network. The challenge lies in the potential for both false positives, leading to wasted resources and alert fatigue, and false negatives, allowing critical vulnerabilities to go unnoticed. Effective risk assessment in this context requires a nuanced understanding of the virtual network's baseline behavior and the ability to prioritize alerts based on their potential impact. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves correlating the detected anomalies with known threat intelligence and the specific security posture of the virtual network. This means not just looking at the raw data, but interpreting it within the context of the environment. For example, a sudden spike in traffic to a specific virtual machine might be a normal operational event or a sign of a sophisticated attack. By cross-referencing with threat feeds that identify indicators of compromise IOC associated with known malware or attack vectors, and by understanding the criticality of the affected virtual machine and its role in the overall network, the professional can make an informed decision about the level of risk. This aligns with best practices in cybersecurity risk management, which emphasize context-aware analysis and proactive threat hunting. The regulatory framework for network virtualization, while not explicitly detailed here, implicitly requires organizations to maintain a secure and resilient network, which necessitates a robust risk assessment process that can accurately identify and prioritize threats. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately escalate every detected anomaly for immediate investigation. This leads to alert fatigue, where security teams become desensitized to alerts, potentially missing critical events. It also represents a failure to apply a risk-based methodology, which is a fundamental principle in cybersecurity and often a requirement in compliance frameworks. Such an approach is inefficient and can strain resources unnecessarily, potentially impacting operational stability. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss anomalies that do not immediately present as a clear, well-documented attack signature. This is a failure to consider the evolving nature of threats and the possibility of novel attack methods. A sophisticated attacker might employ techniques that are not yet widely cataloged. Ignoring such anomalies is a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting the network and its data. It can be considered negligence if it leads to a breach. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the default thresholds and alerting mechanisms of the monitoring system without any customization or contextualization. These systems are often designed with generic settings that may not be appropriate for the specific operational characteristics and security requirements of a given virtual network. This lack of tailored risk assessment can lead to both missed threats and unnecessary disruptions, failing to meet the implied requirement of maintaining a secure and effective network. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a layered approach to risk assessment. This begins with establishing a clear understanding of the virtual network's normal operating baseline. When anomalies are detected, the next step is to gather contextual information, including the nature of the anomaly, the affected components, and the potential impact. This information should then be correlated with external threat intelligence and internal security policies. The final step is to prioritize the identified risks based on their likelihood and potential impact, and then to implement appropriate mitigation or response actions. This systematic process ensures that resources are focused on the most significant threats, aligning with both operational efficiency and regulatory compliance. Question 13. Quality control measures reveal that a critical network service within the VMware NSX environment is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues, impacting multiple virtual machines. The urgency to restore service is high, as it affects a production application. The standard change management process requires a documented change request, peer review, and scheduled maintenance window for any modifications to the NSX configuration. However, the immediate resolution appears to involve a specific firewall rule adjustment that could be made quickly. What is the most appropriate course of action for the network administrator? Option A. Halt all troubleshooting and wait for the next scheduled maintenance window to address the issue, ensuring full compliance with the change management process. Option B. Initiate an emergency change request, clearly documenting the issue and the proposed immediate fix, and seek expedited approval from the Change Advisory Board before implementing the change. Option C. Immediately implement the firewall rule adjustment to restore service, and then retroactively document the change and submit it for review. Option D. Bypass the change management process entirely, implement the firewall rule adjustment, and inform stakeholders of the fix after the service is restored. Correct answer is C. Immediately implement the firewall rule adjustment to restore service, and then retroactively document the change and submit it for review. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge stemming from a potential conflict between the immediate need to resolve a critical network issue and the established procedures for documenting and verifying changes. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass essential quality control and security measures. This situation requires a careful balance between operational urgency and adherence to best practices and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning the integrity and auditability of network configurations. The correct approach emphasizes the importance of maintaining a secure and auditable network environment. By following the established change management process, even under pressure, the network administrator ensures that all modifications are documented, reviewed, and approved. This aligns with the principles of good governance and operational resilience, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by industry standards and best practices for network virtualization. This approach prioritizes long-term stability, security, and compliance over short-term expediency, preventing potential future issues arising from undocumented or unverified changes. Incorrect approach that bypasses the change management process for expediency represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It undermines the audit trail, making it impossible to accurately reconstruct events in case of a security incident or performance degradation. This lack of documentation can violate compliance requirements related to change control and configuration management, potentially leading to audit failures and penalties. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for established procedures designed to protect the integrity and security of the network infrastructure. Another incorrect approach, involving making changes without proper authorization, introduces significant security risks. Unauthorized modifications can inadvertently create vulnerabilities, disrupt services, or violate security policies. This failure to adhere to authorization protocols is a direct breach of security best practices and can have severe consequences, including data breaches and service outages, which may have regulatory implications depending on the data handled by the virtualized network. A third incorrect approach, which involves making changes without adequate testing, risks introducing new problems or exacerbating existing ones. While the intention might be to fix an immediate issue, untested changes can lead to unforeseen consequences, impacting other services or the overall stability of the virtualized environment. This lack of due diligence fails to meet the professional standard of care expected in managing critical network infrastructure and can lead to further operational disruptions. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the established change management policies and their rationale. When faced with an urgent issue, the professional should first assess the severity and potential impact of the problem. If immediate action is absolutely critical and the standard process cannot be followed without unacceptable delay, a documented exception request should be initiated, outlining the risks of not acting and the proposed temporary solution. Post-resolution, the full change management process must be completed retrospectively. This structured approach ensures that operational needs are met while maintaining accountability, security, and compliance. Question 14. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new network virtualization solution offers significant performance improvements and cost reductions. However, a thorough impact assessment is required to understand its broader implications. Which of the following approaches to the impact assessment best aligns with professional best practices for ensuring operational stability and regulatory compliance? Option A. Focus the assessment primarily on technical performance metrics and cost savings, as these are the most quantifiable benefits driving the project. Option B. Prioritize the assessment of potential operational disruptions during the transition, assuming that security and compliance aspects will be addressed by separate, specialized teams after the initial implementation. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment that includes technical performance, security vulnerabilities, data integrity, operational workflows, and adherence to existing regulatory compliance frameworks, involving relevant stakeholders from security and compliance teams. Option D. Limit the assessment to the immediate technical advantages and potential for future scalability, deferring any detailed analysis of security or compliance implications to a later phase of the project. The correct answer is A. Focus the assessment primarily on technical performance metrics and cost savings, as these are the most quantifiable benefits driving the project. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT infrastructure projects, balancing the immediate benefits of a new technology with its potential long-term impacts on operational stability and compliance. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the impact beyond mere technical functionality, considering how a new network virtualization solution might affect existing security postures, data integrity, and the ability to meet regulatory obligations. The VMware Certified Professional 6 Network Virtualization certification implies a focus on a specific technical domain, but the real-world application of this knowledge requires a broader understanding of how these technologies integrate into a compliant and secure enterprise environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive impact assessment that includes security, compliance, and operational considerations. This aligns with the principle of due diligence in technology adoption, ensuring that potential risks are identified and mitigated before implementation. By engaging stakeholders from security and compliance teams, the assessment gains a holistic view, preventing unforeseen breaches or regulatory violations. This proactive stance is crucial in maintaining the integrity of the virtualized network and the data it handles, which are often subject to stringent regulatory frameworks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost savings and performance gains without adequately considering security implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure could lead to vulnerabilities that expose sensitive data, resulting in significant financial penalties and reputational damage, directly contravening regulatory requirements for data protection and security. Similarly, an approach that overlooks the impact on existing compliance mandates, such as data residency or audit trail requirements, risks noncompliance. This could lead to legal repercussions and loss of trust from customers and regulatory bodies. Ignoring the potential for operational disruption during the transition phase without a robust rollback plan also represents a failure to adequately assess impact, potentially leading to extended downtime and business interruption, which can have indirect regulatory consequences if critical services are affected. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the scope of the impact assessment. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, including IT operations, security, compliance, legal, and business units. The assessment should then systematically evaluate potential impacts across technical, operational, security, and compliance domains. For each identified impact, the likelihood and severity should be estimated and mitigation strategies developed. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed by a thorough understanding of potential consequences, promoting responsible and compliant technology deployment. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates potential weaknesses in network segmentation and access control policies within the VMware NSX environment, leading to concerns about unauthorized data access and compliance adherence. Which of the following actions best addresses these findings? Option A. Initiate mandatory user awareness training on data security best practices for all personnel interacting with the virtual network. Option B. Perform a general compliance audit of the entire IT infrastructure to ensure overall adherence to regulatory standards. Option C. Deploy a comprehensive, network-wide security patch to address all potential vulnerabilities identified in the operational review. Option D. Conduct a targeted risk assessment of NSX network segmentation and access control configurations to identify specific vulnerabilities and recommend precise remediation steps. The correct answer is D. Conduct a targeted risk assessment of NSX network segmentation and access control configurations to identify specific vulnerabilities and recommend precise remediation steps. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the operational realities of a dynamic infrastructure. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with network segmentation and access control, which are fundamental to maintaining the integrity and confidentiality of virtualized resources. A failure to adequately assess and address these risks can lead to security breaches, compliance violations, and operational disruptions. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of virtual networks, the ease of provisioning and deprovisioning resources, and the potential for misconfigurations that can inadvertently create security gaps. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically evaluates the effectiveness of current network segmentation controls and access policies within the VMware NSX environment. This assessment should leverage NSX's capabilities to analyze traffic flows, identify unauthorized access attempts, and verify that security policies are consistently applied across all virtual network segments. By focusing on the actual implementation and effectiveness of controls, this approach aligns with best practices for risk management in virtualized environments. It directly addresses the core of the operational review's findings by seeking to understand the root causes of potential vulnerabilities and to implement targeted remediation. This proactive and evidence-based approach ensures that security measures are not just in place, but are functioning as intended, thereby meeting regulatory expectations for due diligence and effective risk mitigation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a broad, network-wide security patch without a prior risk assessment is an incorrect approach because it is a reactive measure that may not address the specific vulnerabilities identified in the operational review. It risks introducing unintended consequences or failing to resolve the actual issues, leading to wasted resources and continued exposure. This approach lacks the precision required for effective risk management and could be seen as a failure to conduct due diligence in understanding the specific threat landscape. Focusing solely on user training without addressing the underlying technical controls is also an incorrect approach. While user awareness is important, it does not compensate for technical deficiencies in network segmentation or access control. Relying solely on training ignores the fundamental architectural and configuration risks that are likely contributing to the identified issues, representing a failure to address the technical root causes of potential security gaps. Conducting a general compliance audit without a specific focus on network virtualization controls is an incorrect approach. While compliance is important, a generic audit may not delve deep enough into the intricacies of NSX security features and their implementation. This could lead to a superficial understanding of the risks and a failure to identify specific vulnerabilities within the virtual network infrastructure, thus not fulfilling the requirement for a targeted risk assessment. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should adopt a structured risk management framework. The first step is to thoroughly understand the findings of the operational review and identify the specific areas of concern, such as network segmentation and access control. This should be followed by a detailed risk assessment that quantifies the likelihood and impact of potential threats to these areas. The assessment should leverage the capabilities of the virtualization platform, e.g., VMware NSX, to gather data on traffic flows, policy enforcement, and potential misconfigurations. Based on the assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented, prioritizing those that directly address the highest risks. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are crucial to ensure the ongoing effectiveness of the implemented controls and to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the virtual environment. This iterative process ensures that security and compliance are maintained proactively rather than reactively. Question 16. The audit findings indicate that a recently implemented NSXT distributed firewall rule has been flagged as potentially misconfigured, leading to an unexpected network segmentation issue. What is the most appropriate initial step to assess the impact of this misconfiguration? Option A. Immediately revert the distributed firewall rule to its previous state to mitigate any potential negative impact. Option B. Initiate a full network scan of the entire virtualized environment to identify any other potential misconfigurations. Option C. Analyze the specific configuration of the flagged distributed firewall rule, identify the affected network segments and workloads, and correlate this with business service criticality. Option D. Contact the application owners of all services that traverse the affected network segment to inquire about any perceived issues. Correct answer is A. Immediately revert the distributed firewall rule to its previous state to mitigate any potential negative impact. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential security vulnerability in the network virtualization environment, specifically related to the impact of a misconfigured NSXT distributed firewall rule. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a rapid and accurate assessment of the potential blast radius of the misconfiguration without causing further disruption. The virtual network administrator must balance the urgency of remediation with the need to understand the full scope of the impact on critical business services. The correct approach involves a systematic impact assessment that prioritizes understanding the affected components and services. This includes analyzing the specific NSXT distributed firewall rule, identifying the source and destination IP addresses or security groups involved, and determining which virtual machines or workloads are subject to the rule's policy. Furthermore, it necessitates cross-referencing this information with business service criticality and dependencies to understand the potential business impact. This methodical approach ensures that remediation efforts are targeted, effective, and minimize unintended consequences, aligning with best practices for operational resilience and change management within a virtualized infrastructure. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disable the firewall rule without understanding its intended purpose or the services it protects. This could inadvertently open up critical systems to unauthorized access or traffic, creating a new security risk. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the technical aspects of the rule without considering the business impact. This might lead to a technically sound remediation that still causes significant disruption to business operations. A third incorrect approach is to rely on anecdotal evidence or assumptions about the rule's impact rather than conducting a thorough technical and business analysis. This can lead to misinformed decisions and inadequate remediation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the reported issue, followed by a detailed technical investigation to ascertain the scope and nature of the problem. This investigation should then be coupled with a business impact analysis to prioritize remediation efforts. Finally, a well-defined remediation plan, including rollback procedures, should be executed, with continuous monitoring to ensure the issue is resolved and no new problems have been introduced. Question 17. Compliance review shows that the virtualized network infrastructure utilizes VMware NSX for security and segmentation. The organization is subject to a regulatory framework that mandates strict data isolation between different application tiers and requires detailed logging of all network traffic between these tiers. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to these compliance requirements within the NSX environment? Option A. Relying on the default NSX network segmentation provided by the hypervisor to isolate application tiers. Option B. Performing a high-level assessment of NSX deployment status without a detailed audit of specific security policies and logging configurations. Option C. Configuring NSX to prioritize network throughput for all inter-tier communication, with logging enabled only for critical security events. Option D. Implementing distributed firewall rules that permit only necessary traffic between application tiers, coupled with comprehensive logging of all denied and permitted connections. Correct answer is D. Implementing distributed firewall rules that permit only necessary traffic between application tiers, coupled with comprehensive logging of all denied and permitted connections. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized network environments, ensuring that security configurations, particularly those related to network segmentation and access control, align with established compliance mandates. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific requirements of the 2V0-641 VMware Certified Professional 6 Network Virtualization exam's regulatory framework, which, for the purpose of this exam, is assumed to be a hypothetical, yet representative, set of guidelines focused on data protection and network integrity within a virtualized infrastructure. This requires a deep understanding of how VMware NSX features translate into compliance controls. The correct approach involves a thorough audit of the NSX security policies against the defined compliance framework. This means verifying that microsegmentation rules are correctly implemented to enforce the principle of least privilege, that firewall rules are granular and specific, and that logging and monitoring are configured to capture relevant security events as stipulated by the compliance framework. This represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core tenets of regulatory compliance, demonstrating adherence to established rules, mitigating risks through proactive security measures, and providing auditable evidence of control effectiveness. The specific regulatory justification stems from the need to prevent unauthorized access, data breaches, and service disruption, all of which are primary concerns for any compliance framework governing IT infrastructure. Incorrect approaches fail to adequately address the nuances of regulatory compliance in a virtualized network. One incorrect approach might involve a superficial review, assuming that the mere presence of NSX implies compliance. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the critical step of verifying the correctness and effectiveness of the implemented controls. Compliance is not about having the tools, but about using them appropriately to meet specific requirements. Another incorrect approach could be to focus solely on network performance without considering the security implications of configuration choices. This is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it prioritizes operational efficiency over the fundamental obligation to protect sensitive data and maintain system integrity, which are paramount in any compliance regime. A third incorrect approach might be to rely on vendor default configurations without customization. This is a significant regulatory failure because default settings are rarely optimized for specific compliance needs and often do not adhere to the principle of least privilege or granular access control mandated by most frameworks. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured audit methodology. This begins with a clear understanding of the applicable compliance framework and its specific requirements related to network security. Next, it involves mapping these requirements to the capabilities of the VMware NSX environment. The audit should then systematically verify the implementation of NSX features, e.g., security groups, firewall rules, distributed firewall, microsegmentation, against the mapped compliance requirements. Documentation of findings, including any deviations or gaps, is crucial. Finally, a remediation plan should be developed and executed to address any identified non-compliance issues, followed by re-verification. This systematic approach ensures that compliance is not an afterthought but an integrated aspect of network virtualization management. Question 18. Assessment of the most appropriate strategy for deploying a new microservices-based application within an existing VMware NSXT data center environment, considering the need for rapid iteration and robust security isolation. Option A. Deploy the application directly to production, enabling broad network access initially, and address security concerns reactively as they arise based on operational feedback. Option B. Implement security policies based on assumptions about application traffic flow without performing actual traffic analysis or testing, relying on the application team's initial guidance. Option C. Configure a single, wide-open firewall rule for the new application segment to ensure maximum connectivity, and plan to refine security policies only after the application has been deemed stable. Option D. Implement granular security policies using NSXT data centers' microsegmentation capabilities. Thoroughly test the application and its security policies in a staging environment, and follow a documented change management process before production deployment. The correct answer is D. Implement granular security policies using NSXT data centers' microsegmentation capabilities. Thoroughly test the application and its security policies in a staging environment, and follow a documented change management process before production deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new network services and the critical need for robust security and compliance within a virtualized environment. The pressure to deliver functionality quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the network and expose the organization to significant risks, including data breaches, service disruptions, and regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to balance innovation with established security, best practices, and adherence to the VMware Certified Professional 6 Network Virtualization, 2V0-641. Exam's implied regulatory framework, which emphasizes secure and efficient network virtualization. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for implementing network changes. This involves thorough design, rigorous testing in a non-production environment, and adherence to change management protocols. Specifically, the use of NSXT data centers' microsegmentation capabilities to isolate sensitive workloads and enforce granular security policies aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are fundamental to modern network security and are implicitly expected within the scope of the 2V0-641 certification. This proactive security posture minimizes the attack surface and ensures that new services do not inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities. An incorrect approach that bypasses testing and documentation introduces significant regulatory and ethical failures. Failing to test changes in a staging environment before deploying to production is a direct violation of sound IT governance principles and can lead to unforeseen compatibility issues or security flaws that impact business operations. This lack of due diligence increases the likelihood of service outages and data breaches, which could have severe financial and reputational consequences. Furthermore, neglecting to document the changes violates audit trails and makes it impossible to effectively troubleshoot or revert problematic deployments, hindering compliance efforts and demonstrating a disregard for operational integrity. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing security policies without a clear understanding of the application's traffic flow patterns is equally problematic. This can result in overly restrictive policies that inadvertently block legitimate traffic, leading to service degradation or complete unavailability. Conversely, overly permissive policies fail to provide adequate protection. This demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and a failure to apply security controls effectively, which is a critical failing in network virtualization. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to change management. This includes clearly defining the requirements and objectives of the change, conducting a thorough risk assessment, designing the solution with security and compliance as primary considerations, performing comprehensive testing in a representative environment, obtaining necessary approvals, executing the change according to a documented plan, and verifying the successful implementation and ongoing performance. Professionals must always prioritize the security and stability of the network over expediency, ensuring that all changes are implemented in a controlled and auditable manner. Question 19. Comparative studies suggest that when planning a significant upgrade to a network virtualization platform like VMware NSXT, a comprehensive impact assessment is critical for minimizing operational disruption. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for conducting such an assessment? Option A. Focus primarily on the performance metrics of the new NSXT version in isolation, deferring any assessment of its impact on existing workloads and security configurations until after the upgrade is complete. Option B. Prioritize a detailed technical compatibility check between the new NSXT version and the underlying hypervisor, assuming other network services will adapt automatically. Option C. Conduct a thorough analysis of all affected network services, security policies, and dependent applications, including a risk assessment and validation in a lab environment before proceeding with the production upgrade. Option D. Rely on vendor documentation and testimonials to gauge the stability and compatibility of the new NSXT version, proceeding with the upgrade as quickly as possible to leverage new features. The correct answer is B. Prioritize a detailed technical compatibility check between the new NSXT version and the underlying hypervisor, assuming other network services will adapt automatically. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network virtualization environments, assessing the impact of a proposed change on existing infrastructure and services. The professional must balance the benefits of the new technology with the potential risks to operational stability and compliance. The challenge lies in accurately predicting the ripple effects of a change that spans multiple layers of the virtual network stack, from the hypervisor to the application. Without a thorough impact assessment, the organization risks service disruptions, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with internal policies or external regulations, which could lead to significant financial and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of the proposed NSXT upgrade. This includes identifying all affected components, virtual machines, physical network devices, security policies, load balancers, etc., understanding the dependencies between them, and simulating the upgrade process in a non-production environment. The analysis should quantify potential risks, such as performance degradation, connectivity loss, or security policy misconfigurations, and develop mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation, ensuring that the upgrade is performed with minimal disruption and maximum assurance of continued service availability and security. This methodical approach is crucial for maintaining the integrity and reliability of the virtualized network, a core tenet of network virtualization best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis, an approach that focuses solely on the technical compatibility of NSXT with the existing hypervisor, without considering the broader network services and security policies, is professionally unacceptable. This oversight ignores the interconnected nature of virtualized networks and the potential for cascading failures. It represents a failure to conduct a holistic impact assessment, potentially leading to unforeseen service outages or security breaches. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the upgrade based on anecdotal evidence or vendor claims without independent verification or testing. This bypasses critical due diligence and exposes the organization to significant risks. It demonstrates a lack of professional rigor and a disregard for established change management protocols, which are designed to prevent such avoidable issues. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thoroughness, assuming that any issues can be resolved post-implementation, is also professionally unsound. While agility is important, it should not come at the expense of stability and security. This reactive approach can lead to prolonged downtime, increased remediation costs, and a loss of confidence in the IT infrastructure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process for impact assessments. This process begins with clearly defining the scope of the proposed change and identifying all potential stakeholders. Next, a detailed inventory of affected components and their interdependencies must be compiled. This is followed by a risk identification and analysis phase, where potential negative impacts are documented and their likelihood and severity are assessed. Mitigation and contingency plans are then developed for identified risks. Finally, a formal review and approval process involving relevant stakeholders ensures that the proposed change is understood, accepted, and that adequate preparations are in place before implementation. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the organization's operational integrity is maintained. Question 20. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new network virtualization solution offers significant operational cost savings and improved performance metrics. However, a detailed review reveals that this solution's default configuration and available security features are less robust than the current system, potentially exposing sensitive customer data to increased risk if not meticulously reconfigured and monitored. The project timeline is aggressive, and the budget is tight, making extensive post-deployment security hardening challenging. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Deploy the new solution, but only after ensuring that all necessary security and privacy configurations are implemented and validated to meet or exceed current standards, even if this requires additional budget and timeline adjustments. Option B. Deploy the new solution with the intention of addressing security and privacy concerns through extensive post-deployment configuration and monitoring, prioritizing the immediate cost savings and performance gains. Option C. Implement the new solution with its default security settings, assuming that the risk of a data breach is acceptably low given the projected cost savings and the organization's general security posture. Option D. Reject the new solution and continue with the existing system, as the potential risks to customer data privacy outweigh the projected cost savings and performance improvements. The correct answer is B. Deploy the new solution with the intention of addressing security and privacy concerns through extensive post-deployment configuration and monitoring, prioritizing the immediate cost savings and performance gains. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a seemingly cost-effective solution for network virtualization deployment, while technically feasible, carries significant risks related to data privacy and compliance. The pressure to meet budget constraints conflicts with the ethical and regulatory obligation to protect sensitive customer data. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands, recognizing that short-term cost savings can lead to long-term reputational damage and legal repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data security and regulatory compliance over immediate cost savings. This aligns with the ethical duty of care to protect customer information and adheres to the principles of responsible technology deployment. By choosing a solution that meets stringent security and privacy standards, even if it incurs higher initial costs, the professional demonstrates a commitment to best practices, builds trust with stakeholders, and mitigates the risk of future data breaches and associated penalties. This proactive stance is fundamental to maintaining professional integrity and ensuring the long-term viability of the organization's operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Choosing the less secure, lower-cost option without adequate risk mitigation would be a direct violation of data protection regulations. This approach demonstrates a failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment and a disregard for the potential impact of a data breach on individuals and the organization. It prioritizes financial expediency over ethical responsibility and legal compliance, leading to potential fines, lawsuits, and severe reputational damage. Implementing the less secure solution with the intention of addressing security concerns later is also a failure. This fix-it-later mentality creates a window of vulnerability, exposing sensitive data to risks. It signifies a lack of foresight and a failure to integrate security into the initial design and deployment phases, which is a fundamental principle of secure network virtualization. Ignoring the privacy implications entirely and focusing solely on technical performance metrics would be a gross ethical and regulatory oversight. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the broader responsibilities associated with handling customer data and a failure to consider the human impact of data compromise. It suggests a narrow, technically driven perspective that neglects critical non-technical considerations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates ethical considerations, regulatory requirements, and risk management into the technical evaluation process. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant regulatory obligations and ethical principles. 2. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment that includes potential data privacy impacts. 3. Evaluating technical solutions not only on cost and performance, but also on their security and privacy features. 4. Prioritizing solutions that offer robust data protection and compliance assurance, even if they require a higher initial investment. 5. Documenting the decision-making process, including the rationale for choosing a particular solution and the mitigation strategies for any identified risks. 6. Seeking expert advice on security and compliance matters when necessary.